Foxy listeners, I am so excited for you joining me today. My guest, Bill, is a 29-time Emmy Award winner and Hall of Fame speaker who produced the longest running, highest rated, and most award-winning regional TV comedy show in the United States. He helps leaders and teams think about their businesses differently, or to put it another way, to think like innovators that they actually are. On a personal note, he's also a musician who is jammed with members of Nirvana, Pearl Jam, The Who, and yes, if you don't know who any of those are, you need to get a musical education. And he is also a pilot, but he does state rarely at the same time. Bill, I think the burning question that we all have is, why are you not serenading your guests when you're flying?
Oh, it's a good point, but for some reason flying, especially the landing requires a little bit more concentration. So
Well, that's okay. Well, I have so many more burning questions. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
yeah, no, I've been looking forward to this.
So we're going to talk about a lot of different things about, how people can become innovators, create sort of breakthrough ideas, a little bit about Johnny Depp, just to give people some like curiosity of like, what is that? How do we connect these things? And we're going to be talking about connecting the dots. So
Right.
we kind of heard the little sort of synopsis, in your bio of what you are, but can you give us a little bit more of who Bill is?
Yeah, sure. I was born in the town of Lancaster, Pennsylvania. My backyard growing up was an Amish dairy farm. I'm not Amish, my backyard neighbors were. But I learned how to milk a cow. Pretty sure I can still do it. I think there's muscle memory there. Um, but most of my background, most of my professional background was in television. I did a number of things in television, but for 15 years, like you said, I produced the longest running, highest rated, and most award winning regional comedy TV show in the country. We were also syndicated on Comedy Central for 2.5 years. I also wrote for The Tonight Show and HBO and Comedy Central and things like that. So that's kind of my professional background. And the show, like I said, was on for 15 years. We were number one in our time slot for 10 straight years, the final 10 years. Number one every single week for 10 straight years, every single week. I started to feel a little overconfident because I thought, okay, we're doing pretty well here. So I bought a new house and a new car, and a month later they canceled the show. So yeah, so I had to find something else, and so I ended up in as a keynote speaker, because when you work in television, you get asked. I mean, when you're on TV, you get asked to speak a lot anyway.
Right.
So I was kind of used to that, and that's what I've been doing ever since. Keynoting, speaking, consulting, coaching on innovation, creativity, and breakthrough thinking.
Well, and I think that a lot of people, and I hear this all the time, is a lot of people think that they don't really have what it takes to be creative. They think they're funny themselves.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? They're like, oh, I think I'm really, really funny, but not stage funny, but like dining room table funny.
That's what I always say. I say that about people who think they're funny and people who sing also. I say, now, if you can sing, and by that I mean if other people have told you you can sing, because it's same thing with funny. If other people have told you you're funny, then okay, you might be onto something. But everybody is creative. Even though
So,
you're absolutely right. There are so many people who are just like, oh, I'm just not creative. I'm an accountant. I'm not creative. Even the accountants think they're not creative until I prove them wrong. But yeah, some people just think that's meant for other people.
yeah.
That's for the others. That's for the dancers and the poets and the street mimes. That's not for me.
So talk to us a little bit about how, well, like, because some people might be sitting there and going, well, like, how do I get creative, or how do I figure out if I am actually creative?
Yeah, well, first of all, you have to get past the idea that you're not creative. And I think people have that idea for a number of reasons, Tanya. Three principal ones that I've kind of figured out. The first is that they think that creativity / innovation, even though they're not the same, but they're under kind of the same umbrella. That first of all, it's this lightning bolt that comes down from above, and it only strikes the gifted few. In other words, you're either born with it or you're not, and if you're not, then you're never going to have it. That's false. The second myth or misconception they have is that it's got to be earth-shattering to count as an innovation. If you don't invent the iPhone or the Tesla or a
Right.
rocket ship to Mars, you're not really an innovator. You're just a dabbler. Okay, that's false also. And the third one is that you've got to be a genius. You've got to be Einstein to be an innovator. And that's not true at all either, because innovation is really nothing more than looking at a situation and trying to make it better.
Right.
And you see a problem, there are little problems and big problems. So the little problems don't need huge innovations. One of my favorite innovations is the curved shower rod. I don't know, Tanya, you're too young to remember the days before curved shower rods. You
No,
get into a
I
shower.
do. I do.
So
I
you know
remember
this. You know what happens then, right?
I know, fighting with the shower curtain and feeling like it's
Yes.
constantly sticking to your leg.
It wants to be part of you, and it's for some reason you've got the hot water on, but the shower curtain is cold and clammy. And for years we put up with that because we just thought, well, this is just the way it is.
Yeah.
And then some innovator said, well, wait, does it have to be? What if we push the curtain out a little bit? Well, how would we do that? Well, what if there's this rod? What if the rod were? You don't have to have an IQ of 200 to figure that out. You just have to look at a situation and go, you know what? Maybe this can be better. So that's all it is. It's not about a lightning bolt. It's about connecting dots. It's about solving problems, seeing things that already exist and putting them together in a new way. That's all innovation and creativity really is. And we all have access to that. We all know how to do that. We've just kind of forgotten because most of us don't have to use it. Now, in my job as producing a comedy TV show, producing, writing, and performing, we had to be innovative every single week on demand, whether we felt like it or not. So one of the things that I learned along with my team was we learned how to do it. I'm not feeling particularly creative. That's too bad because the show's in an hour. So
figure it out.
Yeah. So you learn how to do it. I mean, there are techniques, there are ways to do it, there are ways to turn it on. And that's what I do now. I show people how they can do that in their world. Because it is something that's inherent to all of us. We all have it. The lightning bolt doesn't just hit the chosen few. We are all the chosen few.
Well, and I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that some people don't realize when they're doing it. Like I always say to people, like, you can figure out, when I'm talking to them about collaborations and stuff, I'm like, you do this all of the time. Like you connect things that don't make any sense. Like, have you ever used a cup for a pen holder? Like you constantly use things not for their intended purposes. So you can think outside of the box.
That's a really good example. I love that, Tanya. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think.
Go ahead. Well, when I'm talking with audiences, or if I'm working with an executive team on increasing their innovation, on looking at their world differently, and therefore coming up with different options and different possibilities, and they might start off by thinking, well, good luck, because we're not innovative, we're not creative, and within 15 minutes, I have them doing things that anybody can do, and all of a sudden they're going like, wait a minute, this is innovation? Well, I can do this.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But they think that innovation it's too hard, it's too risky, it's too esoteric. It's this weird skill that you have to go to MIT to have figured out. And then, I just have them start making connections and they're go, what is this? Am I doing it? Am I doing innovation now? Yes, you are. That's innovation. Oh yeah. Well, this, yeah. This I can do. Well, yeah. Just like you said with using a cup for a pen hold. Oh, that's it? Yeah, well, I can do that.
Right. And so a lot of times people just make it more complicated than it is. So what are some, like, if someone's sitting there today and they're kind of going, okay, but like, how do I start this? Is there an exercise or kind of like a hint, like something that you can give them that they're like, okay, this is going to get me started to start thinking?
Yeah, there are a number of things. I'll give you one. Okay, this is a big one. This is a big secret. I call it the magic question. This is the question that will unlock so much innovation if you use it. And I would say try and use it on a daily basis, because then your brain kind of gets into the habit.
Right.
And the question is this: how can I relate this? How can I apply this to my situation? How can I apply this to my situation? Whatever situation you're trying to work on. Maybe it's problem you're having at work. Maybe it's a problem you're having with your 17-year-old son. I've been a 17-year-old son. Trust me, I know how much of a problem we can be.
I have a 16-year-old one. So
there you go. Okay. So the question again is, how can I apply this to my situation? So here's how it works. The next time you're reading a blog or listening to a podcast or reading an article in some 1974 issue of Life magazine in the doctor's office or something like that, and you think, is this all they have? I want you to ask yourself that question. Just whatever you're reading, whatever you're listening to, whoever you're having a conversation with, how can I apply this to my situation? Because see, here's the secret, Tanya. Your brain will try and answer any question you put to it. So, you feed it good questions, you're going to get good answers. That's why the question is not, can I apply this to my situation? Because if you ask your brain that, your brain can say, nope, time for lunch.
Yeah. Nope, let's move
If
on.
you say, yeah, exactly, right. If you say, how can I apply this? And you really let your brain work on it, you'll come up with things. And don't just stop at one, ideally. Just come up with a few. And look, they might all be terrible. Some of them might be absolutely impossible, like they go against the laws of physics or the laws of the nation, whatever. But don't let that stop you, because that's not the point at this time. The point is to get your brain and again, what you're doing is you're making a connection. You're connecting two things, and you might come up with something. That article on macrame in early Western cultures. You think, well, they wove together. Well, they put together. Oh, you know what? Okay, I'm not doing macrame, but what if I put something together? Your brain can do this if you just ask it to. Yeah. How can
I
I
love
apply
that.
this
I
to my
think that's a
situation?
great idea. And I do that quite often with like photos. I'll see a photo that I think is really funny that like I want to share with people. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I somehow have to relate this to business because this is where I want to
Right.
put it. So
Right.
how can I make
Right.
this work? Like, how
Yeah.
can I make this
Exactly.
joke work?
Exactly. That's it. I'll give you an example of this. It's over there. It's out of reach. I can't get it. I have a bottle of ketchup over there.
Okay. We'll
Doesn't matter why.
visualize it.
I just happen to have one, a bottle of Heinz ketchup. If you've ever bought any Heinz product, somewhere on the label, you're going to see something that says Heinz 57 varieties. Does that sound familiar? Have you
Yep.
seen that?
Yep.
Okay. So you ever wonder where that came from? I'll tell you. It happened in 1896 when the founder of the company, Henry John Heinz, H.J. Heinz, he was in New York City. He was riding on the elevated train. New York had an L then, kind of like Chicago has now. And he happened to glance down and he saw a mom and pop shoe store. And in the window, they had a sign that said 21 styles of shoes. Now think about that. If you or I saw that sign, unless we were in the shoe business or in the market for shoes currently, that probably wouldn't even make it through our radar.
Right.
I mean, we would filter it out. It's just background. So we wouldn't pay any attention to it at all. H.J. Heinz saw that sign and said, that's intriguing. First of all, that's a lot of shoes, especially in 1896. He said, but 21, that's a very specific number. You can't just see that number and go like, oh, I mean, 20, yeah, but 21, that's a very specific number. How can I apply this to my situation? So H.J. Heinz, inspired by that mom and pop shoe store, went back and came up with Heinz 57 varieties, which supposedly stood for the number of varieties of food products that Heinz sold. Actually, Heinz sold well over 60 food products at the time, but 57 was a more specific number.
Right.
And what happened was and he started putting that on the labels. Didn't explain it, just said Heinz 57 varieties. Intentionally didn't explain it because now everybody's looking at going, what's 57 varieties of what? What's this? I don't know. Marge, do you know what this is? I don't know what that is. Fred, you know, no. But the point is, people were now talking about Heinz products. They weren't talking about the competition. All because he saw something that most of us wouldn't even register with. And he said, how can I apply this to my... Now, he may not have said those words exactly that way, but he went through the process. How can I apply this to my situation? And, I mean, became the leader in the company because of it.
Yeah, because I mean,
and we can all do it. We can all do that. Next time. So here's what I want all anybody listening or watching this to do. Sometime this week, read an article, go online, do whatever you have to. find an article that you wouldn't normally read, something that you really don't have an awful lot of interest in, and read it with the absolute intention of having this question. And how first figure out a situation that you're trying to work on, and then when you read that article, say, how can I apply this to my situation, and force yourself to come up with at least three ideas.
I
Again,
love
they
that.
might be terrible, and at first you might go, well, this is just impossible, but keep doing it, because eventually your brain will start to get, if you keep doing this, your brain will get the idea, oh, we're doing this now. Oh, this is a thing. Okay. We're going to start doing connections, are we? And those grooves, those synapses, those connections in the brain will start to strengthen. I mean, it does
Yeah.
happen.
Oh, I love this. I love
Yeah,
this. And it's so
I'm
true
sure you've heard
because
about brain plasticity and everything. Your brain, we're doing this then? Okay, great. We'll do this.
yeah. Well, and it's a learned habit to be able to do this. And like
Yes.
I tell people, like, when people talk to me about like, how do you think outside of the box so quick? And I'm like, it didn't start that way. I just
Right.
and I'm like,
Right.
it really just became of like just looking at weird, like to me, toddlers are the biggest wealth of information, and I love watching them because
Too bad you have
there
a
is
16-year-old.
I know, but I do really
Yeah.
find other ones.
Okay. All
Looks,
right.
and I'm female, so it's okay for me to like sit at a park and watch kids, right?
Yeah, that's true. I can't get away with that.
Nobody
That's
bats an eye at it.
right.
But there's no like limits on their imagination, right? Like they can
Right.
just like
Right.
take something and it can be like 5 different things in like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And but we put all of these stipulations. And so I find by like just watching that and being interested in that helps me to be like, okay, how can then I, like you were saying, how can then I take something that's maybe not directed towards me, but use it for my benefit?
Right.
And
Right.
by continuously doing that, it's like growing a muscle. Then all of a sudden it
It
becomes
is.
really, and almost like a party trick. Put these two things together and
Yeah.
make them work.
Back when I was writing monologue jokes for the Tonight Show, this is way back. I would actually fax them. It was when Jay Leno was doing the Tonight Show. Occasionally, I'd go to LA, but I'm up in Seattle, so I would fax him jokes, and there was a private fax number, and I would fax 20 jokes before 8 a.m. because he had other writers also. We're all reading the same newspapers,
Right.
and it got to the point relatively quickly because I was already writing jokes for my own show. But it got to the point where I could open up a newspaper, and yes, we're talking about fax machines, so we're talking about opening up a newspaper too. And I could pretty much read the newspaper and write the jokes simultaneously. So I could write 20 monologue jokes in about a half an hour.
Right.
And look, they weren't all great, but that wasn't the point. The point is I wrote 20 every day so that maybe he would buy one or two. Now I could certainly write 20 monologue jokes now if I had to. It would take me longer than a half an hour because I'm out of practice doing it. But you're absolutely right. It's what we do consistently that matters way more than what we do once in a while. And that's true about anything, any kind of habit, anything you want to do. Saving money. It's better if you save $1 a day than if you save $10,000 once in your lifetime.
Right.
It's what we do consistently that builds up, just like you say, that habit, that muscle memory.
Well, and I think it also then helps you to come up with those breakthrough ideas, because even when I look back, like I keep all of my notebooks. I'm very much a pen to paper type of person.
Yeah.
And there is times where I'm like, this does not make any sense. But now I look back and I'm like, that is a great idea. And I have the capacity to be able to do that now. Right. Like then I was like, this is stupid. That was way
Isn't that
out
funny
to lunch.
looking over? I mean, I'm a pen to paper person also. But isn't it? Have you had this experience? I bet you have, where you look back at an old notebook or something, and you're like, my gosh, I was brilliant back then.
Yeah. Well, I think the ideas that I used to come out with, like say in my 20s, that now I look at it and I go, I probably would rationalize that out.
Yeah.
Like it wouldn't
right.
make it to my piece of paper because I'd be like, bah, bah, bah. But then I was like,
That's right. You would filter it out before you even gave it a chance to live.
Yeah, because I add like whatever. That's
Right.
That's like, that would take me 10 years to get that accomplished. Like that's
Exactly.
a lot of my life now. Whereas then it didn't matter. Like whatever.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. As we get older, we have more more filters, and we become more logical and more rational. Well, this just isn't feasible. And look, some things aren't. When you're 20, the world's open to you and everything. So, things are more possibly more feasible than they are later on in life. But that doesn't affect the imagination. It just affects the application. It affects the implementation. Like, is this really doable or not? Doesn't necessarily mean it's not a good idea. And here's another thing that I have to drill this into people, because so many times, and you know this because this is just exactly what you were talking about. When you're coming up with ideas, a lot of times we start editing them as we're coming up with them. Those are two completely different processes, and they
Yeah.
shouldn't mix together. If you're coming up with ideas, just come up with ideas. Don't edit. Don't go, well, that would cost $1,000. That would cost $1 million. Doesn't matter. Put it down. Well, that's, I'd have to be able to breathe water. Doesn't matter. Put it down there. It doesn't matter. Because if you start editing while you're trying to come up with ideas, you're going to limit yourself. You're going to stop putting ideas down. It's kind of like if you're trying to write something with a word processor. Word processors made this it makes it all too easy to edit on the fly.
Yeah.
And that really suffers. That's one of the reasons why you said you're a pen to paper person.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why that is a much more creative way to do it than if you're typing on a word processor, or on a computer using Word or whatever. Because when you're writing, you're not going to go back and autocorrect. You're just
Yeah.
writing. You're just kind of in that flow of writing, and you're not worried about the spelling because there's no red underline that happens on a piece of paper.
The word convenience. Every time it underlines, I'm like, I know I don't spell it right.
Right.
Stop.
But if that happens when you're trying to ideate, when you're trying to come up with ideas, all of a sudden it's forcing your brain into that other place where it
flips you
shouldn't be
over.
right now. Yeah, I mean, coming up with ideas is all about coming up with quantity. When it comes to creativity and innovation, quality is a function of quantity. The best way to come up with a great idea is to come up with a lot of ideas.
Well, and I think that, like we were saying before, by doing that, all of a sudden, they might start off being a little bit more unrealistic or, sort of out of the box, or however people want to word that. But it gets you, like, you need to like drill through all of that, because the good ideas have been hidden down there for a little bit, for a little while. And if we look at any kind of innovation that's been out there, I mean, if anybody said, oh yeah, no, people are going to like just fly themselves to space, then people would have been like, no, I'm sorry.
I listened to an interview. It was just 2 weeks ago, like literally just 2 weeks ago. And the person being interviewed was talking about Chat GPT, which everybody is talking about now, right? Chat GPT, AI, all that kind of.
Yeah.
And he said Chat GPT is a horrible product.
Yeah.
Okay, well, everybody's got a right to their opinion, but you know who was it that said that? The CEO of the company that makes Chat GPT.
Yeah.
And this was just 2 weeks ago. And the reason he said that, he said, because it's barely even version 1.0. It's kind of like version 0.7. But, we put it out there because the universe will help make it better. We will, because if you wait for perfection, if Apple had waited for perfection, we never would have had the iPhone 1. I actually have my iPhone 1 back there. I wish it were still in the original package, because an iPhone 1.0 in the original package just sold for $64,000.
Isn't that stupid?
Yeah, mine's out of the package, but I found the charger and it actually still works. But they couldn't record video. They had very limited memory. They didn't have a front-facing camera. They only had the one camera. I mean, but when it first came out, we loved it, even though it wasn't perfect.
Yeah.
None of us would go back to that now, because, that's not a good product. No, it was version 1.0. That's when it comes to innovation, you've got to be willing to release version 1.0, depending on what your innovation is. Now, if your innovation is like an artificial heart, okay, try and get it really good.
Try to make that work beforehand.
Yeah. Try to make that work. But here's the thing: even with a bad idea, there's a concept that I talk about a lot called the idea that leads to the idea. So this is why you shouldn't filter out bad ideas. Put them down, because when you're looking back, you might go, well, that's a stupid idea. But what if we took that idea and turned it this? Well, that might work. So
Yeah.
you might come up with $1 million idea because of the bad idea, because of the outlandish idea. You know, your next breakthrough could be because of an idea that was not good, but you wouldn't have come up with that $1 million idea. You wouldn't have come up with that breakthrough had it not been for that bad idea. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think like, there's like a group about 5 of us where we will like brainstorm together, and
Yeah.
probably 9 times out of 10, the idea that you walk away with that you are like determined to implement didn't start off as yours, but somebody else had the
Right.
idea and they were like,
Right.
oh no, this is like crazy. But then you're like,
Right.
no, but I'm going to take that. Like, can I take that?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And you might not be taking it exactly as it is. You might be saying, "Oh, there," just like I said, that I like the idea. One, that might work better for me than for you, but I might have to twist it a little bit. I might have to turn it upside down. I might have to look at it inside out. But there's something there that I'm taking. Again, and what you're doing, Tanya, when you do that, is you're taking their idea and you're connecting it to your situation. You're doing your version of how can I apply this to my situation?
Yeah, and make it work.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is that skill like you had talked about before, and giving us examples of how to do that is just trying to do that. And that could even be, something as simple as like looking who your competitor is and trying to figure out how you can work with them. Like, I love doing that.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
It's
No.
not that I ever have any intentions of going to them and being like, hey, let's work together. But I'm like, I just want to know if I can figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And here's another cool thing that you can do. Anytime you come across, you read, you hear about somehow some organization that's doing something cool, maybe it's a company, maybe it's a nonprofit, maybe it's, whatever, a charity, whatever, a community organization, but that like, oh, that's something cool that they did. Ask yourself that question. Oh, what is it that made that cool? And could I do something like that in my world, in my business, in my profession, in my personal life? You know, you go to a birthday party at a Chuck E. Cheese. Oh, good heavens. Or not. But let's say you do, and you look and say, well, this actually is kind of cool for those kids. What is it that makes it cool for them? Well, they're really involved. They really, they get to touch and play. Okay. Could I take that and apply it to my business somehow? I mean, I may not have, a weird rat is my mascot, but is there something here, because that's really working for them? Could it work in my world? Now, maybe the answer will turn out to be no, but at least you'll be thinking about your world differently, because chances are
Yeah.
your competitor is not trying to find lessons from Chuck E. Cheese or
Right.
whatever,
Well,
or a casino or the church bake sale or whatever.
and it's so true. Like it's funny that you mentioned that one, because I was watching a show yesterday, and it was an older show on TV, and the guy was like
Was
going
it in
to
color?
yeah, it was in color.
Okay.
So he was heading to the gym, and but he wasn't letting his girlfriend come with him, and then she got a call, you need to come, there's been an emergency or whatever. And he ended up being at a kid's playground, and that was when he was going to the gym. He was just playing on all of the toys. And so I was watching this and I was killing myself laughing, because he got stuck in the slide. So shoot, she was his emergency contact. So he's all stuck in the slide. The kids are like throwing balls at him. And so everybody's laughing, and I'm dying. I'm like on the floor rolling. And then I stop, and my son looks at me and he goes, you want them to invent this as a real gym? And I'm like, I would go to the gym if somebody had a giant jungle gym that adults could fit in, and that's your exercise. I'd go to the gym every damn day. We need an adult ball pit.
That's a great idea.
Somebody needs to do this. So I've no intention of doing it.
That's a really good idea.
If anybody is out there, adult ball pits, like the jungle gyms, because I'm telling you, I can't. I mean, I've gone with my nieces and nephews, and I don't fit through those little tubes. They need to make them bigger.
Right. They need to, and they need to make sliding boards slipperier. Is there anything less slippery than a sliding board? You get halfway down, and you're like, I'm not moving.
Yeah,
I'm not moving anymore.
Great.
But see, that's first of all, you took it one step. Most people will just go to that or watch that show and just go, okay, that was a good show. I had popcorn. you looked at it and said, you know what, somebody, you applied that to a different situation,
Yeah.
because they were talking about playgrounds and they were talking about gyms, and you put the two together. What if a gym were a playground? What if we did? That's great. Now, that's being creative. That's connecting dots and being creative. Now, to take that to innovation, because this is where creativity and innovation are different. Innovation is applied creativity.
Right.
Innovation is taking that idea and actually creating something of value out of it. I call it, I say that innovation is turning creativity into money.
Right.
Which means taking those ideas and turning them into something of value. It doesn't have to be money. It could be like a cost savings, but something of value. Because at some point you've got to take all those ideas, that's the ideation part, and you've got to filter them. That's when you put your editing brain on. Not then, but at this point. And you think, okay, got a lot of ideas. What's the one I'm going to focus on? Or at least the few, but preferably the one. And then how can I bring that into the world? Maybe it's a blog post, maybe it's a book, maybe it's a product, maybe it's a new service, whatever. Maybe it's a playground gym. But that's, so that then, but somebody who's listening to this is going to do that, and they're going to make a lot of money, and you're going to say, that was my idea. Have you ever had that experience where you've seen something go, wait a minute, I came up with that, but you didn't do anything with it?
And I think we've all had those moments where we're like, I totally said somebody should have invented this. Right. And you were like, yes. And so they did.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. I totally thought that we should have a phone that can also, attach us, connect us to the internet and take pictures. Actually, I didn't think that.
I watched Get Smart. I knew those were coming down the pipeline.
That's right. Or the Jetsons. Basically, everything was in the Jetsons. Everything that we're doing, what we're doing right now, is from the Jetsons. Absolutely.
Which is still, you know what? That still holds up. That cartoon still holds up till today. Because I watched an episode because it's starting to come. Everybody's talking about it. So it's coming out again. And I'm like, I want to watch this show. And I kind of remember what it's like. And I'm like, yeah, you still got it.
Yeah. That's fantastic.
Okay. So I mentioned at the beginning about Johnny Depp. And so, of course, he's, has been like a hot topic and stuff. So talk to us about how he inadvertently helped you create a cultural icon.
Well, just to be clear,
I want to know this story.
Sure. And to be clear, this is pre-wackadoodle Johnny Depp when this happened. It was in 1987, January 10th, 1987. I was producing my show. And January 10th, it's a Saturday. It's a show night for my show, which was called Almost Live. That's the name of the show. And we were excited because we'd gotten Johnny Depp to be the guest. Now, back in 1987, Seattle wasn't the cool place it eventually became. It was hard getting decent guests. But Johnny Depp was starring in a TV show called 21 Jump Street, and they shot it just right up in Vancouver, BC, which is north here. That's north. 2.5 hours north of here. So I called him up. And I said, hey, Johnny, my name's Bill Stainton. I produce a comedy TV show. He said, yeah, I know who you are. We watched the show. So, oh, right. Yeah, I guess you can get it there. Of course. Yeah. So I said, we'd like to have you as a guest. He said, yeah, sure. I'd love to. I'm a fan. So, perfect. Super duper. So let's compare our calendars. We came up with a date, January 10th, 1987. This is the day Johnny Depp is going to be on the show with a happy dance time until it was around 10:30 or 11 o'clock in the morning. And I get a phone call, and it's Johnny Depp. And he said, listen, Bill, I'm not going to be able to make it tonight. No, they scheduled reshoots for Jump Street, and I tried to get out of it, but I can't. Okay, so now we're in a panic. It's the day of the show.
Right.
He was a big chunk of the show, and we got nothing, and the clock is ticking, and pretty soon the studio audience is going to arrive. We got to come up with something. So I call an emergency meeting, and we try and come up with a guest to interview on the show. It's got to be somebody local here in Seattle. So that's, what about one of the Seahawks? No, they're out of town. What about that cute new anchor at Como TV? No, she's in rehab. No, so, and we just keep, she was, and then got fired. But that's a different story for a different time. But we keep trying to come up with it, and nobody was working out. No, we're starting to get desperate when all of a sudden, one of my writers, he was my lowest paid writer. he pops his head up and says, well, maybe I could do something with with liquid nitrogen, which just scared the hell out of all of us because he was a little crazy anyway. We're not going to give him liquid nitrogen. Maybe I could do something with liquid. He didn't understand the problem. That's what the problem was. We're trying to come up with a guest to interview on the show, and he's babbling on about liquid nitrogen. But here was the problem that we had. The clock kept ticking and ticking and ticking, and we weren't coming up with any options. So finally, we had to ask him about this. And that's when my lowest paid writer, whose name was Bill, like mine, started telling us about what he could do with liquid nitrogen. And eventually we had no choice but to put Bill Nye, my lowest paid writer, on the TV show. And that's the night that Bill Nye, my lowest paid writer, became Bill Nye the Science Guy, all because Johnny Depp had to cancel. And here was the thing. Bill Nye was the different dot that I wasn't connecting.
Right.
Because I kind of had blinders on. I was, no, we need a guest to interview, a guest to interview, a guest to interview. I couldn't see that there were other options. So, but what Bill Nye actually did was he actually asked a different question. In fact, the whole staff, we were all asking the same question. We were asking, who can we get to interview as a guest on the show? Bill Nye was asking, how can we fill the time?
Right.
And do you see how a different question changes the context?
Yeah.
When you look at your situation differently by asking a different question, it opens up all new possibilities and opportunities. And all of a sudden, a Bill Nye the Science Guy, who wasn't at the time, he was just Bill Nye, my lowest paid writer, all of a sudden becomes a possibility. But I almost didn't see it. And I'm an innovation guy. I'm a creativity guy. I'm a connect the dots kind of guy. So any of us could be wearing blinders at any given point. We have to be really aware of that. Like, oh, that's a dot that could be connected. So we need to kind of be aware of those and be willing to collect and then connect those dots. But yeah, it all happened because something went wrong, and we had to innovate. We had no choice.
Yeah. Well, I love that. And I mean, it's such a, and it's funny because I knew that because I remember researching it because my son did a science experiment and had to research him because he like
did he really?
up and faked it. And then he was like, hey, and then, so anyways, he was doing it. And then when I knew you were coming on the show, and I was, I had said to him, oh yeah, this is like, he had done the show almost live. Do you remember I told you about that? And he was like, yeah, Mom, that's that Bill Nye thing. Remember? And I'm like, wait, this is the Bill. I was like, oh my God, this is so exciting now. It was like, right. But sometimes I think it's like in your situation that sometimes you get so stuck in what the problem is that you need to step out or ask other people to kind of go, that's when you go, hey, like, how would you solve this? Because I think sometimes you get so stuck in what is going on that it's easy for someone else to come in and go, well, just have that guy. Like, make him go on.
You're absolutely right, Tanya. A lot of times we don't see the options because we're so ingrained. I forget who it is who said it's really tough to read the label from inside the jar.
Right.
But because we do get so stuck. We have our blinders. We have our this is our universe. This is our world, and we don't realize that this is just the part that we're looking at. But there are other ways of looking at any situation.
Yeah.
So yeah. And like I said, I almost didn't see it. I almost missed it. It was just because we had no choice that I finally lowered my blinders and went, okay, well, hang on. What would that look like? Well, we could do this and this and this. That actually sounds kind of cool. Let's
and I mean,
let's
and
do
look
that.
where that small little idea of like, okay, just like fill in has gone to, like, right? It
Yeah, which kind of pisses me off because there's nothing quite like seeing your lowest paid writer rocket past you in terms of fame, wealth, influence.
But at least you get to kind of go, it's like having kids, right? You kind of go, I made that, or I made that. I'm sorry.
Right. No, it is kind of like that. And every now and then, if I have a science question, it doesn't happen often, but every now and then I can call him, hey, Bill, what about this? Why is this? Well, and then, get ready for an hour conversation while he explains the minutia of, how science works, because that's his jam. I mean, he really is that guy.
Well, and, I think in this like whole story too, it's a good reminder for people to, if you have people on your team, is to question them of like, what do you like to do? Because sometimes a person has a hidden talent that you're like, and I just came across it the other day where I was like, wait a minute. Like, you have all of these degrees. Like, you have like 3 master's degrees. And then like, it was somebody who was cleaning for me.
Oh
And I
my
was like,
gosh.
this is insane. But they're like, yeah, but it doesn't convert to here in Canada. And I was like, I got to start asking people more of what they do when they're not here.
Yeah.
Because sometimes that just helps to unlock it, right? Because they're like, I'm just a cleaner now. But I'm like, but you used to not be
Right.
that.
Right. Right. Exactly. And even though you're a cleaner, you still have this wealth of experience. Um, it's we'll go back to the Bill Nye story. Now, look, I knew Bill had that background. I mean, when we were on summer break, he would go work for Boeing. That's a little company near here that makes airplanes. And he would work for their military division, it creating and building things that you and I are not allowed to know about still to this day. So I knew he had that, but I didn't look at him that way. And part of the reason was, and this is me, bad boss, Bill, bad boss. I discounted him because he was the lowest paid writer. And how often do leaders do that? Like, leaders think, well, no need to listen to the intern or the new person or the quiet person, the introvert, because, we all know introverts never have good ideas. The only good ideas come from the loud people who are in senior management. Well, that's ridiculous. So it's the onus is on the leader to make sure that he or she listens to every voice in the room, whether that room is in person or that room is virtual. You never know where the great idea is going to come from. That you never know which connection is going to be the one that leads to the breakthrough. And that connection can come from anybody. It can come from the lowest paid writer. It can come from the intern. It can come from, as you said, it can come from the outsider who sees the world differently. Well, Bill Nye was that. He was an outsider who saw the world differently. But it could come from somebody who's just like, well, why don't you just get that guy to do it? As you said. But leaders tend to discount those people to their own detriment. And it's kind of human nature, the loudest voice wins, which tends to be a male voice, unfortunately. So, well, the only good ideas, I guess, come from loud males.
Right.
I've actually looked into this, and turns out there's no scientific correlation between volume and intelligence. Those are two completely different skill sets. So, yeah, just be open to those other dots, those different colored dots, the ones that you wouldn't normally have considered because of whatever reason. They're quiet, they're a minority, they're young, they're just the cleaning person, whatever. Hey, if they've got that idea, does it matter where it comes from? Harry Truman, who used to be the president of the United States, once said, it's amazing what you can accomplish if you don't care who gets the credit.
Yes.
And the corollary of that is, look, the good ideas can come from anybody. It doesn't matter. If it had been the custodian who came up with the idea for the iPhone, that's still a great idea.
Yeah. Well, and I think it was the accountant that came up with the name for Coca-Cola. Like it was,
really? I hadn't heard
believe
that. That's
so.
fantastic.
Yeah. And
wow.
So and I think it's, I think this is like one thing that companies have, in my experience of like owning different franchise and stuff, it's always been the one thing that makes me want to beat my head against a wall, because I'm like, why do you guys sitting in an office think how to figure out like the roots? We had a bread, like we delivered commercial bread. And I was like, why do you sitting in a boardroom think you know how to make these routes more efficient when you've never spoken to a driver? Like, do you know who knows? That driver, that little peon that you're like, no, he's little.
Right.
He's going to be able to tell you the quickest way to get there. He's also going to be able to tell you who you need to talk to and who takes longer, right? Because he knows he's on the ground.
There was, I believe it was a Swiss trucking company that they were trying to come up with the most efficient routes through mountains or something. I'm clearly, I'm a little unclear on the details, but they were trying to come up with some kind of an efficient route. So they asked the question, here's another magic question. Who else does this really well? So they thought, well, who else is really good at finding efficient routes? And you know what they turned to? Ants. The insects. Ants are really good at finding efficient routes. And so they talked to like insect people. Well, how do they do it? Well, they do pheromones or they do this. Well, whatever it is they did, that became a part of the software for this trucking group, and it worked. The good ideas can come from anywhere.
Yeah.
I talked about my little local company, Boeing. I keep pointing because it's 5 miles from me where they build the biggest airplanes. In fact, just a few weeks, I saw the very last 747 ever fly over my house.
Oh,
Yeah, kind of sad.
those were
But
good
Boeing
ones.
also builds drones, and Boeing had a problem because they needed these drones to be able to fly in a really tight formation. I don't know why. Maybe we're not allowed to know why, but really tight formation and be able to each turn, like that, at once without crashing into each other because these are multi-million-dollar drones. And they were just having trouble figuring out the algorithm to make them do that. And then finally somebody said, well, who else is really good at being in tight formation and turning as one? You know who does that really well? Fish. Fish do that really well. So the Boeing aerospace people started talking to fish experts and saying, I don't, ichthyologists, marine biologists, Aquaman. I don't know who they talk, but they talk to fish people. And the fish people said, well, here's how the fish are doing it. And so now part of the software that runs Boeing's drones is designed specifically to emulate fish brains. So, yeah, you never know where the great idea is going to come from.
Well, and I think that's just it, right? And this practice of looking for how you can integrate, like whoever would have thought that, drone technology would come from fish or
Right.
right? Like it it just took somebody of going, hey, wait a second. This might, this might be a good idea. Let's try this. Like, I think it was, and you hear stories of this all of the time of people trying to just do different ways. And sometimes, like you said, you never know where it's going to come from. I think it was UPS was trying to save money. And one of the drivers or something had said, just always make right-hand turns.
Yes.
And they were like,
that's
what?
Right. That was UPS.
Yeah. And he was like, well, it takes a long time for us to make a left-hand turn. So if we just constantly always make right-hand turns, we would save a lot of money in gas. And it was like millions of dollars because someone went, just turn right.
Just turn right. Just turn right. Just do that. Oh,
right. Whereas most people would be like, that's ridiculous. We're trying to save money.
Right. Exactly. Or they think that it's going to be some incredibly expensive solution, but because a lot of times
we're complicated, right? It has to be intricate for it to be innovative.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the time we find we're solving the wrong problem because we just see the result of that problem and we think that's the problem. We see the symptom of the problem and we think that's the problem. There's a story pretty much based in truth, although in the retelling some of the details have gotten switched around, but the basics of it really happened. So it was the Jefferson Memorial in Washington, D.C. Some people say the Lincoln Memorial, but the Jefferson Memorial is prettier, so I'm going with that one. They were having a real the stone was crumbling, was disintegrating, really rapidly. Okay, that's a multi-million-dollar problem. That's a serious problem. And they thought, okay, what do we get? We got to get new stone. We got to rebuild. We got to do something. And finally, somebody said, well, this is kind of goes back to like Toyota's 5 whys from Six Sigma. So, well, wait, why is our stone deteriorating? So if the other ones aren't deteriorating, why is this one? Well, because we wash it every 2 weeks with really harsh chemicals. Oh, well, that's the problem. We need to get a hold of the people at DuPont and have them make less and give DuPont millions of dollars to come up with less abrasive chemicals. Well, no, wait a minute. Why are we having to wash it every 2 weeks? The others aren't having to wash it. Well, because of all the bird poop. We got to get the bird poop out. We're inundated with bird poop, which is not a pleasant experience. Well, you know where this is going. Well, why are we? They're not inundated. Well, because we have millions of birds who come here to eat the to eat the spiders. Why do we have so many spiders? Well, the spiders come here to eat the insects. Why do we have so many insects? Well, because we turn our spotlights on at dusk, and it turns out that the combination of the dusk light and the spotlight creates the perfect mood lighting for for insects to have insect sex. So they all come because it's a big, it's a big rave. It's a big place for them to have sex. And so the spiders come to eat the insects and the birds come to eat the spiders and then the birds poop it. So somebody said, well, it's because we turn the spotlight on at dusk. Yeah. Well, what if we turn the spotlight on? Yeah. What if we turn the spotlight on later? So let's try that. Let's try turning the spotlight on an hour later. They did that. No mood lighting, no insect sex, no insect sex, no insects, no insects, no spiders, no spiders, no birds, no birds, no bird poop, no bird poop, no need to clean. So they thought they were going to have to fix a multi-million-dollar problem, and all they had to do was turn the lights on an hour later, which actually saved the money. Yeah.
Well, and I think
So
that's just it, right? Like there's, I don't remember, maybe it was like Steve Jobs who always said, if you want to figure out how to do a job the easiest, give it to the laziest person on your team. And
that's great.
I
I don't
remember
think I've
hearing
heard
that and
That's
I'm like,
great.
oh, that's really funny. But when we had 30 employees, I was like, I really want to try this. And we had one guy that everybody was like, why do you keep this guy around? He never works. Like, he's so lazy. And so when we were trying to get more efficient, I went to him and I was like, how would you do this job? And it turned out that he wasn't lazy. He would just sit there and go, I don't know why people are doing like 17 steps. It can be done in 2. Like, but nobody.
Wow.
And I was like, why didn't you ever say anything? And he looked at me and went, nobody asked. And I was like, damn it, you're right. Nobody asked. So I was like, I need to start asking
Part
questions.
of that's on him. Part of that is on him. That said, it kind of goes back to, like, as the leader, like,
but I wasn't connecting the dots. I was just kind of going, yeah, you're right. He's lazy. We got to try to find it, instead of going, why is he lazy?
Right. Right.
Do I just have to turn on a light? Or turn off a light? Could it be that simple? Like, right? And it was really just, I needed to ask. And then he became one of the most efficient people that were in there, because then he realized, oh, okay, this is like a skill that I can use. And I was like, yeah, you save me money, I keep you on. That's the way this works, right?
Well, that's cool too, because that may have been a superpower that he wasn't even aware of, or that or that maybe even if he was, he didn't value it as a superpower, because, well, yeah, we tend to think that the things that come easily to us are easy to everybody.
Are easy, yeah.
Like for me, again, writing jokes is insanely easy for me. But when I do that for other people, other speakers or whatever, they think it's a gift from heaven.
Yeah.
They think it's magic. So no, it's just writing it. Well, how do you do that? Well, I don't know. You just write a joke. We can't do that. It's magic. But to me, it's so easy. To him, he had a superpower that he didn't realize was a superpower, because he probably just thought, well, doesn't everybody do this? Can't everybody do this? No.
And I think I think everybody who's out there has that. They have something that they can do really, really easy off the top of their head, and they don't use that. Like for me, that it took me years, like way too long, over a decade, before somebody finally said, that's your superpower. The fact that you can think so fast off of your feet. And I was like, I just do it when we're out at parties and I'm telling jokes, and they're usually about my husband, and I get some laughs, and like, that's it. But she was like, but you can think off the cuff so well, and you don't use that. And I was like, I don't know, right? But it's like, sometimes it takes, and so then I started asking, like, what do you like, when you to, like, when we would get together and stuff like that, I go, what do you think that is super cool that I do? And usually I'm surprised. Like,
that's a really good question. I mean,
because we don't
some boldness to ask that, but
like what and sometimes you have to coax a little bit, but eventually it gets to the point where usually it's shocking, because you're like, really, that's what you think is super interesting about what I do, right? But again, it goes back to that thing where we have to get out of our own heads a little bit, because like for you, writing jokes is like super easy, but to somebody else, they're like, oh my God, I don't know if I could ever do that. Right. Like people think, telling jokes is like super fun. I could be like a stand-up or whatever. And I'm like, first of all, one, my husband would kill me, because half my material is him. And it's not favorable, right? It's relatable, but it's not favorable.
Yeah. Because if it's favorable, it's not funny. I mean, because humor is all about conflict. If there's no
exaggeration, right? He's like, I don't actually do that. And I'm like, but it made the joke funny. I got the laugh.
That's the danger with funny people like you and me. And I still get into trouble for this all the time. Getting the laugh is everything, and getting the laugh justifies everything. I mean, look, I worked in comedy for 15 years, and to me, getting the laugh, well, yes, but that you've destroyed that person's life. Yeah, but it got a laugh. Yeah, okay, well, maybe I need to think differently about this, but we do just tend to like, gotta laugh, therefore, you know, and that is a danger for funny people, I think.
Well, I think it is, but I mean, I'm very, very fortunate that I have a strong husband who's like, it's fine. It's not
He's
like, I get
he
it.
is
I know.
comfortable and confident with his own. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I mean, I was like, you married this. Like, you knew we weren't 19 when we got together. I did not hide who I was with you. And he was like,
That's
no,
hilarious.
that's really true. And people are like, seriously? I'm like, on our first date, I literally said to him, like, look, I'm not saying tomorrow, but if you're not planning
Yeah.
on like marriage and kids, can we just eat supper and then like not waste my time? And he
Right.
was like, okay. He was like, it was the weirdest first date I was ever on. Cause then you went completely normal and you were like, so tell me what you do. And I was like,
Wow.
I just didn't have time.
So that's what you led with.
That's what I led with.
Wow. He is a brave
And
man.
I
My
mean,
hat is off to him.
it's 18 years later, so it worked. So it
So
was
let me ask you this, Tanya. When that person told you that your superpower was being able to think quickly on your feet, and to you that was kind of like a party trick, like because you said the context in which you would do that would be like at parties, and when they said that, did a part of you go, well, yeah, but that's just something I do at parties. That doesn't apply to my work. Because a lot of times we'll do that too, because then it is part of, how can I apply this to my situation? Oh, you know what? That is a superpower. Could I use it at work? You know, in addition to just parties. I'm just curious if you kind of went through that
for
process at
me,
all.
I think because I have that entrepreneurial spirit and to me, I think there's a difference between a business owner and an entrepreneur. Entrepreneur is somebody I feel who's always trying to, do that innovation or expand, grow or whatever. So I was in that stage. So I really took that and I was like, okay, I need to be able to use this. And it took me a while to figure it out, but I was dealing with a lot of clients and like teaching them how to collaborate with other businesses. And then I realized I need to be able to use this and figure out how I can teach other people to do this.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
to me, I was like, I totally feel like I learned how to do this. So then it was a little bit of a party game still, but I played with it where I would go out and I would be like, anybody who was like, oh, I can't, like, I'm not an out of the box thinker. I was like, come here. Right. So like, sadly,
Right.
there's few people that I experimented with. It's like, I'm
Yeah.
going to try to see if I can get this person to think outside of the box by the end of this night. But it was something that I think I was conscious about trying to expand on how can I make this make me money? Because it's super easy to do.
Well, that is the innovation part. It's taking the creativity and how can I use this to make money? That's the implementation. How can I create something of value from this? But you also had to do something which a lot of us entrepreneurs have to do, is taking something that was kind of innate to you that you could do almost without effort, and trying to reverse engineer how you do it so you can teach others how to do it. Just like with innovation, or and I have taught joke writing in the past also, but innovation, I've had to kind of break it down. Like, how do you do what you do? I don't know. I just do it. Okay,
Yeah.
well, let's think about how do you do this? So it's like if somebody were to say to you, okay, you're able to walk, tell me how to walk. And we're not talking about like somebody who's just physically unable to walk, but tell me how you walk. Well, you get up from the chair. Well, how do you do that? I don't know. You just get up from the, well, you put your hands where. It's like, oh my goodness, this is, but you do have to kind of break those things down sometimes, because that's the value when you can show somebody else. It's like learning to play golf. You have to break down the grip and the swing and all that kind of stuff. I suppose I can't play golf. I mean,
I can hit the ball, but I need somebody else to watch it.
I can hit the ball, but
I literally hit the ball every time and go, did anybody see where that went?
Yes, it's behind you about 14 feet. I
wonder how I did that. I do get it in front of me.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Well, you're ahead of me then.
But it's true. I think, like for me, it was, doing the reverse engineering was kind of hard to do, because you also have to, it was the practice that helped me, because getting other people to walk through it, then I'd be like, okay, they're missing this though. How do I figure out that? So it was really being willing to experiment and go, can I make someone else do this. And I've
Right.
always kind of wondered that, when I had a retail craft store, I went to my niece who was blind and I was like, I want to teach you how to crochet. And she's like, I don't want to learn how to crochet. I'm like, I know, but if I could teach a blind girl who can only see to the tip of her
Right.
nose, I can teach anybody. So anyways, it was a horrible looking project, but she did it. And I was like, sweet. And I got a lot out of that because I would literally say to people, people come in, oh, I could never learn how to do that. I'm like, I could teach them. I taught a blind person how to do this. I could teach you. It might not look beautiful at the end, but I can make you do it. Right. But it was, I think for me, it's being willing to experiment with it and constantly work at trying to figure out like, okay, what are they missing? What else do I need to add in there to make this recipe kind of work?
That goes back to the idea of being willing to release version 1.0.
Yeah.
You do that, and then you see where they're saying, well, yeah, but they're still getting stuck here. Okay, I need to fix that part. Okay, now they're getting stuck here. Okay, I'll fix that part. But if you wait until all the parts are fixed, one, you're never going to know because the universe is what is, who tells you, whatever your universe is, who tells you. But you release that version 1.0, say, here's my lesson plan. We'll do this.
Yeah.
And then they'll say, this part was a little squirrely. Okay, let's engineer that. Let's come up with a better, what would be better? What would make it clearer? And okay, version 1.5 or version 2.4 is going to be better because you'll figure that out. But you've got to be willing to throw out the first pancake. Make that first pancake that nobody's going to eat because it's ugly and it's undercooked or overcooked. Okay, that was the test one.
Yeah.
Now I've gotten some feedback. Now I adjust.
Well, and constantly be willing to do that because I think that's, that's the biggest thing I think is your best audience on who's going to find the glitches is the users, but you need to let them use it. So it's okay. And, I use,
and you need to want to hear about the glitches.
Yeah. Yeah. And be like, tell me how this doesn't work. Like before, when I used to like teach people how to think outside the box, I wouldn't go like, I want you to walk around your house and I want you to find things that you use not for their intended purposes and write that down. It didn't start that way. I started going, when you see two squirrels outside, I want you to like make a storyline of what's going on between the two of them. And that would work for like people people who have like a really good imagination would love doing it with me because we would do it with like birds or whatever. And we'd be like, Bill, you're flying the wrong way. What's going on? And they're like a whole conversation. We'd be killing ourselves laughing. It was like the funniest thing. But to some people, they couldn't grasp that. So when those people came back and said, that just doesn't, it seems stupid to monologue what my dog might potentially be thinking at this point in time. I was like, okay, great. And now I have to find an alternative to that exercise to get people to that point.
Because different people learn in different ways, but different people have different strengths. Okay, so that one didn't work for you. I took ballroom dance for a few years. You'd never know it by seeing me dance, but actually that's not fair to my teacher. She was a great teacher. And she said one of the things that she learned was that you've got to be able to teach something at least 5 different ways.
Yeah.
Because what works for one person, like I've been a drummer all my life, so counting is easy to me. Knowing where the 1, the 2, the 3, the 4 is, that's really easy to me. For some of her students, they couldn't do that. They couldn't hear the beats. So she couldn't teach them 1, 2, 3, 4. She couldn't teach them that way. She had to teach them a different way. And she had to find, okay, what's a way that will work for them? And then some people were different in other ways. Okay, well, what's going to work for them? And that I love that because that's all about adapting. And going, okay, you had this perfectly good activity about the squirrels, but it didn't work for everybody. So that doesn't mean it's not a good activity. That just means, okay, I need to find another way to get this point across for people who are maybe more kinetic or more visual or more whatever.
Yeah.
And that's innovating. That's adapting.
Well, and I think what it did for me was it helped me to continuously think outside the box because I was like, how else can I get, okay. So making a conversation for animals, like how else am I going to do it? But it was just really, it came down again to like asking questions. Right. And sometimes you get those suggestions from people that you don't want to say, like people are like, you should write children's book. And a bat got stuck in my friend's house. And I had a whole story because I ran, like, I was like, I left you for dead in that house. And she was like, you said you were going to help. I said I was going to help you find the bat. I said nothing about disposal. I found it and I ran. Right.
I found the bat.
But I was like, afterwards, I was like, Can you imagine this bat when it gets home? And then I like monologue this entire story of this bat getting home and being like, honey, you are not going to believe the day I just had. Oh my God.
Right.
Right. And I had this like entire story for
Yeah.
it. Right. And people are like, where does that come from? And I'm like, I can show you how to do that now.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
Yeah.
this is how it started.
It's also, and it also comes down to being willing to play,
Yeah.
being willing to think in those ways. And I find that when I'm working with clients, like I might be working for, a CEO and his or her team of their 12 highest executives. And look, I'm not going to have them, jump on beanbag tables or beanbag chairs to put, clown noses on, because they're not going to do that. But I have to find ways to get them to look at this situation differently. And usually I do it by asking different questions, questions that make them go like, oh, I never thought about it that way before, because that intrigues them. They don't think that that's playing, but it is playing. When all of a sudden they have to start to figure something out, that's playing. It may be grown up playing, but it's playing, because they're solving a problem. That's what kids do when they first play with blocks and they're trying to balance the blocks. They don't know how to do it because they're young and they're idiots and they don't have good spatial awareness. They're solving a problem. They're figuring it out. And the worst thing is, and this is a good lesson for leaders, and you know this because you've had kids, the worst thing is when they're trying to figure that out, for you to go to them and say, look, no, here, do it this way.
Yeah.
And now they have no further interest, because it wasn't about the result. It was about the learning. It was about the figuring it out. And that's what smart teams like to do. One of the things I tell leaders who are leading creative, innovative teams, and by the way, every leader is secretly leading a creative, innovative team, whether they know it or not. But your job as the leader is to give them the what. Here's what we want to accomplish. Here's where we want to go. But then let them surprise you with the how. Too many leaders give the what and the how, and that takes all the joy out of it. Let them surprise you, and they will surprise you, because they'll come up with ideas that you wouldn't have come up with. Yeah. Surprise you with how. Let them figure it out. Even if you think you already know the answer, yours might not be the best answer. It might be the loudest, but it might not be the best.
Yeah.
Let them, let them come up with something. And because it does come down to play, and that's what turns creative people on.
And I think it helps people to be engaged, because they feel like, oh my God, like I created Bill Nye. I gave him his start, right? It's that kind of thing that you can help with that. So this has been, I feel like I could sit and chat stories with you for hours.
Yeah, we probably could, but good heavens, poor people listening going, hey, I've got a life. I've got stuff on the stove.
Yeah, well, that's okay. Let it burn. This is important. So
let it burn. That's your takeaway, kids. That's Tanya Fox. Let it burn.
Let it burn. There's more important things going on.
Over there behind you, it says something like love
where you are.
Okay, we'll change that now. It's let it burn.
Let it burn.
Let it burn.
It can all be remade, right?
Yeah.
So for those that are listening, we're going to get into our shameless plug time. Tell me what you have going on, where people can contact you. And I think you have something special for our Foxy listeners too.
I do have something special. I have got what I call the Essential Team Innovation Starter Kit. This is for anybody who leads a team of any size. Frankly, even if your team is you and your philodendron. But if you want to be more innovative, if you want to see things that the competition doesn't see, if you want to come up with ideas to solve challenging problems or capitalize on and leverage opportunities, if you want to be able to do that, this is a great guide to get you started, because it's going to talk about some of the things that are holding you back and some easy ways to get your team innovating immediately. And you can get it just by going to my website, billstainton.com/Fox. You see what I did there? Fox.
I love that.
So you go there to billstainton.com/Fox, and you will be able to get your free copy of the Essential Team Innovation Starter Kit.
So what else do you have going on? What are you up to? What's your next project?
My next project, I'm actually developing a program for credit union leaders and their teams for how to think differently about their credit union, how to be more competitive, how to see things differently, and do that. I've got some pretty cool large keynotes coming up in the next few weeks, and I'm learning a new piece by Chopin and a new piece by Bach on the piano.
Perfect. All right. Well, on some of those keynotes, we've got to get you over Canada way again.
I love Canada. Like I say, I live pretty close anyhow, at least to British Columbia.
Yeah, I'm just in Alberta, so it's like a hop, skip, and a jump.
It is. I think I'm flying into Alberta. Yeah, I'm flying into Calgary because I've got a thing coming up in Banff, and I say Banff because there's two F's, and I
Well,
choose to pronounce both of them. Yeah. I've got an
that's your
event
right.
coming up in Banff, so flying into and Calgary's in Alberta, right? I'm in the
Yep.
United States, so we barely know. Canada's the big one north of us, right? Yeah, that's right. That's
Yes,
that's how
you are right. Calgary is in Alberta. Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
So I'll be in your neck of the woods, but then I'm just getting into a car and they're driving me to Banff.
I love it. I'm not going to call it any other way. Anybody who's here is going to understand that.
Right.
Bill, it has
And
been
don't get me started on the capital of Saskatchewan. I'm not gonna mess with that.
Listen, we like to laugh here. We're polite,
Yes,
but we like to laugh. And that can be shown in
and
our
you're good at it.
names.
You're very good at it.
Thank you so much for the laughs, the time, the knowledge. I think there's a lot for people to take to realize that it doesn't take a lot, but some brain power to start this creativity and innovation.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, Tony. This really was fun. You're really good at this. This is a blast.
There was so much fun in this episode. There are times where I seriously consider having you guys listen to what happens after the show, because we sit and chat and we kind of talk, and Bill is so much fun. And he was so generous listening to some of my stories. So, you guys, you have to go and follow this guy. Not only is he hilarious, I love the way his mind works and the way I can actually see him connecting dots, even though I don't know if sometimes he knows that's exactly what he's doing. But I think there was so much in this. So I do want you to take the challenge. I want you to read an article that you actually wouldn't read. And I want you to ask yourself the magic question: how can I apply this to my situation? And come up with 3 ideas minimum. If you are struggling with this, or you're like, I'm not really too sure how to think about this, drop me a message and I am going to help you out with that. So don't forget to visit our website at foxtalksbusiness.com. You're going to be able to find the blog that's going to have all of this information, all of the links of where you can connect with Bill, and a few other thoughts that are going to be going on just there, as well as where you can receive the link to be able to get your essential team innovation starter kit. So again, it doesn't matter whether you are a massive team of 1 or a small team of 100. This is something that's going to really be able to help you to start thinking differently. And that's what we need to do. We're moving in such a fast-paced world that being able to be creative and then turn that into innovation is going to be one of the biggest assets you can have. So why not start doing that now? And as I always say in every episode, no matter what you're doing today, make sure that you take time to have fun and to laugh, because if you're not having fun, why the hell are you doing it?